is a huge day in the title race. Arsenal winning the early kick-off, having come from behind twice to go 3 points above the Blues. City, though, 1-0 up, dominating, should have got a second, but somehow missed chance after chance, and then was sucker-punched at the other end when Chris Wood tapped in from close range. It's a day that many City fans probably feared when that second goal didn't go in. The longer the game went on, the more you felt Forest might just grab an equaliser. That they did. 2 points dropped, make no mistake about it. Arsenal are now 2 points above the Blues with a game in hand. The final score, Nottingham Forest 1, City 1. Well, let's go back to the studio and hear what Nedum, Martin and Natalie made of that.
Thank you so much to Alistair Mann there. So it has finished 1-1 at the City Ground, and the pendulum of the title race swings back to North London. Of course, Arsenal beating Aston Villa earlier on today. I'm still joined in the studio by Martin O'Neill and Nedum Onuoha. So if we look at the stats of the game, the stats do not tell the story. 73% possession for City, 23 shots for City, 6 on target. Forest had just the 1 shot on target, and they scored from it. Nedum, what has happened in the second half?
Honestly, it's so disappointing because they did have control of the game, but it just goes to show in the Premier League you have to be clinical, especially away from home, because for Forest, they were always going to have a go at some point. I think their manager, they kind of drip-fed that sort of momentum within the game. The crowd were getting behind them more. And even though they only had 1 shot on target, look at the nature of that chance. It's basically a tap in from 5 yards out. I think they committed bodies forward, and as a consequence, they got what they think they probably deserved in that second half. But you know, when people look back at the game, you'll see the highlights and the chances that City had. That was that clinical nature which we were talking about at half-time. It has to be at the back, in midfield and up front. And I think if you're going to assume that 1 goal will be enough in the Premier League, you're going to be in for a rude awakening, unfortunately. That's what it is today, and that will feel like a loss for City because the game was right there in front of them. But then come the end, they run out of steam, and yes, two big points dropped.
Martin, there was a lot of chances missed by City in that second half. You know, Foden, Haaland, you know, quite a few of the big players didn't finish today. It just a case, does that just happen sometimes?
Sometimes it does. It just happens like that. We felt here in the studio, I think it was mentioned so many times in commentary as well too, the second goal becomes so important, particularly in a game that you're absolutely dominating in. That's the point, because you think there's just a thought in the back of your mind, you know, they might have an attack. It didn't look likely. I mean, they make a substitution, Nottingham Forest make a substitution with 12 minutes to go, take off a fellow who's a defender, midfield player, and put on a centre forward at the stage. 12 minutes to go, you're playing at home. And they haven't been in Manchester City's penalty area at all during the course of the game, and yet they get a goal from nothing when Rodri should score, Haaland should score. When, you know, 75 minutes gone in the game, it should be 3-0. Well, I'm not even counting other little things bouncing around the penalty area. It is, just as you mentioned it. Those are desperate points dropped, particularly, and it's a funny old game. You're talking about maybe 15 minutes to go down at Villa Park. Villa leading 2-1 in a game. Manchester City absolutely buoyant. I mentioned this before. Then you go and you lose that. You're maybe hoping for a draw in the game. And then suddenly you lose that. Then you dominate a match here and you concede by about 4 minutes or 6-7 minutes to go. It's terrible. It really is terrible. And it'll be much as you said, it's been a great week and a fantastic victory at the Emirates Stadium. Fantastic victory. Puts you right back in the game. Suddenly now you're feeling as if you're chasing, whereas the results go in different directions. You're sitting there top of the league tonight. It's unfortunate. They just have to get over it. But really, it's a game that they've not only dominated, but they should have won by a distance.
Yeah, football, it's a funny old game, Nedum. You know, Wednesday, everyone was talking about, will that game be pivotal in the title race? Will we end up winning the league by 1 or 2 points? Will that be the game? And then only 3 days later, everything changes again. There's a long old way to go in this league yet, isn't there?
Yeah, there certainly is. And I think at times, you know, people don't want to hear you say how it's a long process and it's a marathon, not a sprint, because we're in this sort of age where you have to overreact to everything. There were people who said Arsenal are going to lose the title because they lost in midweek.
Yeah.
But then they've played against Aston Villa, and they've gotten a great result for them, especially having been behind twice as well. And then City dropping points away when it looked like they were controlling the game. That is a blow. But I think in the wider context of it, there's still tons of games left. And City believe that they can go on a run of winning matches, not just staying unbeaten, but winning matches. And I think if they are to win a league title, that's what they have to do now. But I think for those players, they'll be hugely disappointed. And, a point away from home in the Premier League seems like it's okay, but for them, they have the highest standards. They know they could have performed better individually, collectively, and maybe it's a lesson for them going forward between now and the end of the season.
If you were taking any positives from today's game, Martin, what would they be?
Well, I kind of just slightly disagree with you in the sense that I thought they did well today. I thought they did well in the game. They're playing away from home in a match. No, you're absolutely right. Away from home in the Premiership, and you've got 73% possession of the game. I wouldn't be as. I'm sitting down as a manager, I'm walking back in there, and Pep Guardiola, I'm sitting back in the dressing room, and you get your head in your hand for a while, and you're thinking to yourself, where did that go wrong? Where did it go? Then you think just of chances that have gone. That either I'm talking about Laporte's header, either side of the goalkeeper is in the net. That's just a bit of ill luck more than anything else. And the Haaland that you would have bet your life on scoring the goal, the rebound, anyway, you must put that in the net. And it's not a goal. And you're thinking, how did that escape? How did that game get away? 2 points. Yes, you will consider that these things are not, you don't get over them just in 10 minutes and say, lads, we'll change this round. And they'll be thinking about it on the way back up the motorway again. They'll be thinking about it. Be thinking about it tonight. They'll be thinking about it tomorrow. But then after that, you've got to go. You've got a Champions League game coming up. Just have to park it now at this minute. Not as easy as that. I never found those things easy to park. They're really difficult. You have to keep your mind on it. You think, it's so infuriating. But it's happened. It's happened. There's still time, as you've mentioned.
100%, yeah.
We've mentioned a couple of the big misses that Erling Haaland had today. Something that's really infuriating me of late, Nedum, is the amount of big accounts and press and media that are counting Erling Haaland's touches in every game. Yeah. I've seen a tweet while I was walking through the game of another account saying how many touches Erling Haaland's had in this game. How would you assess his performance as a whole today?
I don't think it was necessarily one of his best, but I don't think it was that bad either. I think he'll be disappointed based on the chance that he had where he hit the crossbar and then when he kicked one over. But still, he's getting into the right areas and he's occupying the two centre-backs. I think he competed very well considering it was 2v1 through the middle. And he remained patient. He made tons of good runs. I think there were a couple of opportunities where, he's tried to slide people in, so he's going to get involved in the game from that standpoint. So he wasn't, any time when he comes off the pitch and he's not scored or assisted or whatever, I'm sure it would be in his mind. But he did do a good job overall. There's a reason why Forest would pen back so deep in that first half. It's because they're concerned about the big striker that's standing in the middle. If he wasn't there, maybe they'd be more aggressive. So I think it's to say it was fine would be a thing. But when you look at the chances which he missed, he's his own sort of like biggest critic and he knows that he should have scored those. So I think that will live in his mind. And hopefully he doesn't necessarily associate that with the reason why the team didn't win today, because it's far bigger. But he had touches, they used him well, he made good runs, he created opportunities, and he had opportunities himself. I think, as Martin alluded to before, performance was fine, it was good. And I think sometimes that can be a bigger indicator than results itself, because if they weren't performing well in the game and it finished 1-1, then that's a bigger concern, in my opinion, than, say, the fact they performed well, but unfortunately they didn't get the reward today. And I'm sure Pep will mention that in his press conference afterwards.
And in terms of strikers for Forest, Martin, we both looked at each other when Chris Wood came on and we were saying, OK, they're going for it, for it. And those tactics ended up working for them.
It worked. Yes, it was the goal. They scored the goal. Wood scores the goal as well, too. And at the end of it all, they kind of proved their point. But I'm not so sure that you're playing at home and you're sitting with 12 minutes to go and going to put on the substitution of your centre forward. I think if I would have been in the crowd, I'd be baying for a centre forward to come on. You're 1-0 down. What have you got to lose in the game? You've absolutely nothing. You've had a wee bit of luck at the other end. You could have been 3-0 down by this stage. So, yes, it happens, he scores a goal. Please don't tell me that was planned.
Yeah.
Yes. We did say though, as soon as we saw it, we were, the nerves.
Exactly. We'd almost been building up to that. Man City hadn't got the second goal. It was really, really difficult for them in that sense. Sorry, difficult for Forest in that sense. But even so, It's a goal.
Yeah, and as well, they brought him on, but it wasn't as if he created tons of chances and stuff as well.
No.
He was just a body that was out there.
And it was the first time that Nottingham Forest got more than 3 bodies anywhere close to the penalty area. They were rushing in, and when you saw the bigger picture, once the fellow was on the run, and he'd eluded a couple of players, and he's making ground into the penalty area, you saw 3 or 4 Forest players going in, and you think, this is really dangerous. If he gets this ball across the box, it's really dangerous. As it turns out, it's a goal.
Now, as you mentioned, we have a Champions League game coming up. So Wednesday night, the Champions League returns for us. We're taking on RB Leipzig away. Now, they had a big win today against Wolfsburg, a 3-0 win in the Bundesliga. They currently sit 5th in the Bundesliga. It's the first stage of the knockout competition of the Champions League now, of course, after a bit of a big break, of course, going back to before the World Cup. Nedum, Champions League is back.
It's well and truly back, yeah.
How are you feeling about the game?
No, I'm feeling positive from a City perspective. You know, they have ambitions of winning it, and they understand what it's like to get through the rounds now. You know, this is many years of them attempting to do so. And I think this RB Leipzig team, they will be a dangerous side. And I think for people who are watching, you know, you need to give them more credit than, say, their league position sort of would have you think, especially because they're in the knockout rounds of the Champions League. When you look at the fact that Barcelona are playing in the Europa League, think of the quality needed to continue in this competition. So they'll be a very dangerous side. They've got a certain style of play which will make you feel uncomfortable, but City will enter the game, as is the case most of the time, as favourites. And I think if they can be clinical in terms of how they try and play the match itself, it won't be comfortable because at some point you have to suffer. As Martin said before the game, when you're in the later rounds of the Champions League, there are times when maybe you have more talent, but the teams that are there are still really good sides. You need to be able to execute across 2 games, but we've seen City do it for many years now. I kind of expect the same, but it will be a tough time. But as long as they get through, I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, and I don't think Leipzig are strong now in the last 18 months as they were a couple of years ago. You know, that's my own view from watching the Bundesliga. I don't think they're that strong. Those will be famous last words, of course, you know, but I don't think they are. And Manchester City, over the 2 legs, you would expect them to get through.
It's the 2-leg aspect of this time now. Yeah, you would expect City to do so. Yeah.
You mentioned clinical there. We're going to have to be far more clinical than we were against Forest, though, on Wednesday night when we do travel to Leipzig. Yeah,
again, it's unfortunate. Manchester City are generally a clinical side. You mentioned the number of goals they scored. For heaven's sake, and the differential between that and Nottingham Forest. So they do score goals. It is a bit of bad luck, but it's frustratingly bad. That's the biggest thing for Manchester City. You know, it's, as you mentioned earlier, if this had been a hard-fought 1-1 and Forest had a couple of chances early on and hadn't taken them and then scored a late goal, you think, well, OK, fine. This game should have been out of sight. That's the point. And that's where you feel about it. And that's why you don't get over it immediately. You know, but there's a game coming up, as I said to you. It's a big, big match coming out at the weekend, and they'll have to. I hate these words, but park it.
Yeah, how difficult is that though when you have a result like today in the Premier League and you have to shake it off, you have to park it ahead of a big European game?
Right. Okay. There's thoughts there. After Wednesday night, you're thinking, as Manchester City are thinking, as the way I would think, I'm heading down now to the City ground, we'll dominate possession there. We're hoping at the back of your minds, and I don't care what you say, your concentration all on your own. Not at all. You have to be thinking about your rivals as well too. Definitely do. Listen, Aston Villa, really difficult game at Villa Park. Maybe we can get something out of that. It turns in the last few minutes. There's points. OK, it's back to us, we'll win. Should have won, don't win that there. It drives you mad. It drives you mad. The lovely thing about Man City is that they don't have that much time to dwell on it. But I'm getting back to my point as a manager. This will be the worst 24 hours. Going back in the bus, reliving the moments, reliving the second goal that should have been scored, reliving the third one that should have been put in the net, and then reliving that last minute. It'll kill you.
We saw Riyad Mahrez drop to the bench today, Nathan Ake, but obviously then he came on. Are you expecting a few changes ahead of the Leipzig game?
I genuinely don't know. I do not know. But I think to mention someone, I thought Phil Foden played well today. I think given the fact that he's been out for as long as he has been, to see him out there to finish the game and to do it in the way that he did. Oh, did he finish the game? I'm pretty sure he finished the game, didn't he?
No, he came off.
He came off, yeah. Sorry. Cancel everything I said. No, I'm joking.
Ake on.
Yes, but he played well. He played well, created chances. He was direct, and he was probably one of City's better players. So I think they might make changes, but ultimately, this is what we're used to with City. They will make changes, but consistency of performance tends to be very, very high. And I expect the same sort of thing on Wednesday, whatever the team is that he puts out. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Like Martin said there, the idea of parking it. I struggled the most as a player with not letting go of a game until the next time I kicked a ball. Mm-hmm. So say if we were playing Saturday evening, it'd be stewing. On Sunday, it'd be stewing. Mm-hmm. But then when Monday came and we trained, and now all of a sudden I'm thinking about a possession session, a 5v5 game or something like that. Before you know it, the emotion disappears and it's like, now I'm ready for the next one. Whereas until I kick a ball again, the last thing I remember is being on the field and just having that sort of feeling of disappointment. Because I think you mentioned there, it feels like, I don't really like to say it very often, but it does feel like 2 drop points today for City because they had control.
Absolutely.
You know, and Forest will feel themselves like they've gained a point, you know what I mean, as opposed to potentially drop 3. So
absolutely,
I'm
totally with you. Yeah,
it lives with you 100%.
Funny you mentioned that as a player, and I wasn't dissimilar to you in that sense. But usually, if Nottingham Forest has a player, if we get a bad result, I used to think the manager might be looking at me. So then I had to think about the weekend. Then I had to think about Monday. And even though we would do a little 5-a-side on Monday, I had to wait to the manager's team talk after the 5-a-side to see what sort of rollicking I might get. And then there's the next time to think about the next game coming up. Exactly. So I had the whole weekend to try and relive as much as anything else. Listen, honestly, life changes now, and it's move on time. Yeah. And it is great to know that you have a massively big game coming up in a few days' time.
Yeah.
Absolutely, we do. Back in the Champions League on Wednesday night. Matchday Live will be here. I will be here in the studio. I'm going to be joined by Paul Dickoff, Karen Bardsley and Darius Vassell. So do join us on Wednesday night ahead of that RB Leipzig game in the Champions League. Nedum, thank you so much for joining us today. Pleasure. Always a pleasure. Martin, it's been wonderful. We really hope you'll come back and join us again.
Very nice of you. Thank you very much, and thank you for asking me, you know.
Thank you.
Thank you, young man.
That's great to be with you.
No problem.
Thank you. And thank you all, as always, for watching Matchday Live. It did not go our way today, but there is a long way to go in this Premier League yet. And we're still in it. And that is all Pep was asking for, he said, at this part of the season. So don't fret, Blues. You know we will fight to the end. We'll see you on Wednesday.